Welcome to Ring of Fire. I'm Mike Papantonio. Coming up on today's show, the Republican Party's been hijacked by dangerous extremists. No other way to put it. We'll tell you how that happened. And President Obama, well, he has a very weak record when it comes to transparency. And we'll be talking about why this administration has such a hostile relationship with the press. And income equality is actually making our society dumber. We'll explain how coming up. But right now, just remember, you just now stepped into the Ring of Fire.
You can't change Washington from the inside. You can only change it from the outside.
Grand jury secrecy rules.
For political gain.
The press can find out.
That has nothing to do with politics, but go ahead.
It wouldn't bother me.
Oops.
When President Obama came into office, he promised us all transparency in the area of government. He's failed to deliver that, and in most of the time, he's shown direct hostility to the press almost at every turn. Joining me now to talk about this is newspaper publisher and journalist Rick Outzen. You know, Rick, just another one of those ironies that is coming out of the White House. We remember Obama running 2 terms on transparency, how important it is to be transparent and let the Constitution work in the United States. Remember all those speeches he gave about transparency, and we have to change the Bush years. Put this in terms of reality, what he says and what the reality is.
Well, what we have, Mike, is we have a veneer of transparency when the actual practice is completely different. We've had, this administration has more aggressively gone after whistleblowers and the press than any of his predecessors. We thought the Bush administration was bad, but we're looking at the Obama administrations, and they've gone after 7 employees using the Espionage Act of 1917, a bill that was created for World War I, and he's used it more times than any of his predecessors. It's really shocking to me.
Well, what he does, Rick, I think the most troublesome thing, it's the same thing he does. We've seen it so many times with this president. We heard him say, for example, we have to put Wall Street criminals in jail. We have to make sure Wall Street is responsible and acts responsible to consumers. And then the next thing we see is there's no prosecutions. Wall Street sells us down the river to the tune of about $13 trillion, steals from mom and pop pension programs. This president has done nothing about it. Zero. Has done nothing at all. And it's the same kind of thing where he said during those years he was running, I'm going to do this, and absolutely just the opposite is true. Same thing is here with transparency, isn't it? I mean, exactly the same president, the same kind of nonsense, just rhetoric talk, and then nothing but just the opposite.
Right, well, we know in 2009, his very first executive order was about the Freedom of Information Act. He was going to be the most open and transparent president in our history. Now, what we found out, and they just recently did an audit at the end of last year, Eric Holder told all the different agencies to go ahead and update your Freedom of Information Act regulations. We found that only 62 out of the 99 federal agencies haven't done anything since 2009. 31 of those agencies haven't done anything in more than a decade, and Eric Holder's own agencies is operating under regs from 2003. You're right, Mike, it's all about the talk, very little about any real action taking place. And the part that bothers me now is they've gotten very aggressive in going after the press. Look
what
at
are they doing, Rick? Just tell us what are some of the specifics of what they're doing? Don't they have government employees spying on other government employees where it comes to talking to the media?
Oh, they've done that. Listen, we had 21 Associated Press lines that were subpoenaed and being monitored. We've got reporters that have gone after. New York Times, one of their top reporters, wrote a book, State of War, in 2006, and they're going after him to disclose all of his sources. He took it all the way to court. The circuit court has now said he's got to reveal them. So they're willing to prosecute an author for a story that was written in 2006 about things that happened in the Clinton administration. So, it's just aggressive. It's an aggressive approach.
As you look at this story, of course, the thing that started this story was this report that came from the Committee to Protect Journalism and Journalists. And I've never seen a more scathing report. I mean, if you compare the way this president is regarded by the free press compared to how Bush is regarded by the free press, this president is actually regarded with more disdain because they're on the front lines, these journalists. They're saying front and center what this president is trying to do to journalism in this country.
Well, it's much more oppressive. We thought the Bush administration was bad. And let's admit, the media, most of the media got caught up in 9/11 and the early stages of the Iraq War. But as it started to come around, it was the media that revealed Abu Ghraib, who revealed the secret prisons in Guantanamo and other parts of the world. The ones who found out that the NSA was listening in on all of our phone calls. And now, without the media, we don't have any kind of watchdog. And the Obama administration, while he says one thing, on the whole other side of the story, they're squashing whistleblowers. They're squashing any press that tries to find out what's really happening behind the scenes. And it's a horrible statement for an administration that our expectations were so much higher for, Mike.
Well, all we have to do is look at the numbers. We don't have to pontificate. We don't have to guess. The numbers speak for themselves. 92 million. This is the number I see coming from this report. 92 million decisions to classify information, more than they've ever seen. The other thing they're doing, Rick, talk about the website. How it's almost black humor when you think of the Beltway putting up a website that says this is our disclosure. These are our methodologies. All it is a PR campaign for this president.
Right. Yeah, you're right. They created the open government website where we were supposed to be able to get all the data that we wanted to have. We could send in our information request and it would be answered promptly. But what we're finding out, and you're right, Mike, they're classifying everything. They've actually, the Bradley Manning case showed us that they were classifying newspaper articles. So that calling those classified in some of the pouches that they were delivering. They've also created a new job classification, Mike. It's called the non-critical sensitive job, which these people don't have any access to classified material, but they cannot whistleblow because they're considered sensitive. And they completely squashed them being able to go to the Merit Systems Board Administration to report discrimination, to report abuses. So they've created this loophole while they're saying they're protecting whistleblowers. Like you've said before, they create this whole new job classification that makes it, frightens people from coming forward when they see the abuses that are taking place.
Well, I mean, look, I think there's so many ugly parts to this story, but I think what troubles me the most are these what I call them Obama bots. They are people that, they're so connected to being a Democrat, and they're so all in with this president that they can't say this is wrong. And so what the Obama administration, for the Obama bots, what he does is he comes out with something called the West Wing Week, which is some film that they put out on the internet, and it's this newscast they put out on the internet talking about what we've done in Washington this week. Well, it's just one big PR scam.
Right.
Or the way that they have used the internet is to make it one PR scam rather than saying this is what's happening that's important to you. These are things we did this week. All of that is covered up. It's subject to prosecution by any journalist that goes after it. And what we have is him saying one thing, and then what he's doing on the other end is completely opposite. Rick, how about this? How about them trying to quantify and classify what a journalist is? To where they can prosecute, they can say, no, you're not a journalist.
Right.
You just do television. You don't do investigative journalism, so you're not a journalist. What's your take on that?
Well, again, it's trying to subvert the whole process. And you're right, Mike. The West Wing is it's so frustrating to watch as a journalist, and I think I might qualify as one, but under their definition. But because you're right, it's this veneer. It's all an act. And what's killer to me, and I know it is to you, Mike, we both were believing that when Obama was elected, we would see more openness, more transparency, where actions met words, and it doesn't happen. It didn't happen on the Wall Street crisis. It's not happening in Syria. It's not happening here. And for us as journalists, the most important thing is to have access to the real data so that we can give a very clear picture to our readers and viewers what's happening. He's denying us that opportunity.
Well, I think it's worse than that. What he's actually coordinated is, for example, these coordinated attacks on really capable journalists like Seymour Hersh. I mean,
Right.
Seymour Hersh is now even doubting this whole backstory of Osama bin Laden, and all of a sudden, Seymour Hersh feels the brunt, feels the attack of the Washington White House. You know, we saw Matt Taibbi say, really attack this administration for basically lying to us about what they were doing with Wall Street, lying to us about why they wouldn't prosecute, lying to us about what a disaster it would be if we actually prosecuted Wall Street criminals. So Matt Taibbi then becomes the target by the White House. Doesn't this sound like the days of Nixon? How do you in any way differentiate what Obama's doing with those Nixon years?
I don't think you can, Mike, and that's what's so disheartening about it. You're right. It's going after the very core of what journalism is about. We're supposed to be the watchdog of wrongdoings. We're supposed to be the ones who judge the performance of the president and the administration. And what they've done is they've classified anything that puts them in an unfavorable light. And that's not what we expect. And what we're finding is that there's very little difference between the Republicans and Democrats now.
Oh, no, they're both the same. They're both carrying the water for this president on that. Look, we see better response for journalism in places like Asia, the Middle East, Africa, and Russia, for God's sakes. And here we have it's gotten so bad is you have this administration called Top Secret America. That's what we have become, Top
Right.
Secret America. And the talking point is, oh, we can't talk about that because it might end up in hurting our war on terror, with this ubiquitous war on terror that every time they want to pull out that card, they do. Where does it end? Where does it end? Does it have to end with a new president, or are we going to see this through the end of his administration?
I think we're going to see it through the end of the administration. I think if the bone, it's already been set, the precedent has been set. I don't think we can shake it from it. It will take a new president. But you're right, we have set the standard for free press up until recently. But we have always set that standard. And now you're going to where people can get better news coverage going to Al Jazeera TV than they can from CNN or Fox.
Well, they certainly get better coverage on Free Speech TV, this program
Right.
that we're doing. Do you think mainstream media would ever criticize this president like this, unless it's Fox News, the babble of crazy? But the mainstream media is even afraid to talk about these issues. We need to talk about it on Free Speech TV. Rick Outzen, thank you for joining me, okay?
Thank you, Mike.
Coming up, we'll find out why America can't afford the Republican Party. I'm Mike Papantonio. We'll be right back with more Ring of Fire.
You're watching Free Speech TV, a network powered by the people.
Welcome back to Ring of Fire. I'm Mike Papantonio. The Republican Party has been pushing policies that are bankrupting America and endangering our economy. Joining me now to tell us why America can't afford the disaster that is the GOP is Richard Eskow from the Campaign for America's Future. Richard, everybody's following what's happening in the Beltway, but they don't really get it. I think at the end of this discussion about what the Tea Party crazy Republicans have done to us, they don't understand that Republicans, as you point out in your article, are just too expensive. They're costing us too much money. Lay that out for us, would you?
Well, you got a situation here where, first of all, we've lost trillions of dollars in the economy as a result of a crash in 2008 that was caused by deregulation. So that framework underlies everything. That you had a Tea Party, as well as some elements in the Republican Party, but even before the Tea Party came along, you had Republicans pushing for the philosophy of deregulation that the Tea Parties have adopted, as if somehow it's intrusive of the government to protect us from the misbehavior of businesses, whether it's Wall Street or BP Petroleum in the Gulf or whatever it is. So that kind of sets the backdrop for everything, Mike. And then you go into the crisis of 2008, where people understandably felt that Wall Street got bailed out and they didn't, which is what Republican operatives created the Tea Party to capitalize on. But now what we've got is an extremist Republican Party that believes that government in all its forms causes harm, but they're cutting back on the useful parts of it that are hurting us the most. With the cuts we already have seen in place as a result of 2011, we've lost percentages off the GDP, we've lost 1 million to 2 million jobs, we haven't been able to create the stimulus that would have given us the other 2 or 3 million jobs up front that might have pulled us out of this never-ending recession very early on. And now they're coming in, and their solution for our ongoing problems is to create even more cuts to government spending, whether it's the government shutdown, which is costing as much as $1.6 billion every week, or whether it's the cuts that they're trying to impose with the government shutdown, which range from everything to the Keystone XL pipeline with all the human and environmental and dollar costs that could create, to additional cuts in government spending that's going to create even more joblessness, even more recession going forward, and maybe they'll push us into a debt default where the government doesn't pay its bills, and then all hell breaks loose and we don't even know the level of cost, trillions and trillions of dollars to the world economy that could be lost if the global economy collapses.
Richard, one thing we don't see the media talking about is we don't see them talking about the fact that there's no way to describe what's been happening even the last 4 years as anything that looks like real recovery. You have people that say that after 4 years of this thing that we're trying to call recovery, that we're just about a fifth of the way out of the hole that was left by this Wall Street disaster. That, again, I can't help but saying nobody has been prosecuted for, but nobody's been prosecuted for. And so we're about a fifth of the way out, and there is this illusion that there is real solid recovery taking place. What is your thought?
Well, I think a lot of people know in their daily lives there isn't much of a recovery. What we had three problems. We had the possibility of the collapse of the global financial economy, which they got all over and they bailed out the banks, and that part was taken. Then we had unemployment and underemployment as tens of millions of people lost their jobs or weren't able to get a job advance or weren't able to work full-time and so had to settle for working part-time. So we had the jobs crisis, which hasn't been solved, and we have the wage crisis, which has been going on for 30 years as people feel rightfully that they just can't get ahead in life, that their middle-class wages aren't getting better. And that problem was made worse by the crisis of 2008. So not only do we have these tens of millions of Americans who are unemployed or underemployed and nothing's being done about it to speak of, but we also have so many other Americans, the vast majority, you call them the 99% if you like, but we have a situation now where in 1 year, 2012, the top 1% saw their income go up 32%, while the rest of the country in real terms, or at least 90% and below, saw their income fall back in real terms. We see more wealth since the so-called recovery flowing to the top 1% than we've seen in modern times. We've seen some of these figures since that we've seen in 100 years. So,
but even with, look, we know 50% of the total income that came in 2012, as you're pointing out, the top that 50% went only to the top 10% of the American population. That's a staggering number. And at the same time, you have these same greedy loudmouths complaining about things like food stamps. You know, we can't give people food stamps, even though we understand that something like food stamps and safety nets actually help boost our economy. Nobody ever puts that together. Just like they don't seem to understand that building roads and bridges actually moves our economy in a real way, not just an illusory smoke and mirrors kind of way. Explain how that works, because I think so many people don't understand that when the person down the street gets food stamps, it actually helps the economy. We're simply government spending money at the low end rather than putting all the money at the top end with things like the big Wall Street banks.
Well, look, Mike, here's the simplest way I can put it. When a very wealthy person gets more money, earns more money, they put it in the bank right now. They're not even investing it because they literally have so much they don't know what to do with it. We've talked about that. If a person who's struggling to put food on the table is given money for that food, they spend it today. That money goes to the shopkeeper that sells it to them. It goes to the trucker that got it to their town. It goes to the farmer that raised it. So that's money that gets injected directly into the economy. If the U.S. government hires a person who's been struggling to pay their bills and gives them decent work at decent wages, that money goes directly into the economy. They pay the bills they've been waiting to pay. They buy the things they've been waiting to buy. They get the plumbing done on their house that they haven't been able to afford, and on and on. So the kind of spending that we need is the kind of spending that will get the government going again. The technical formulas of the economists show that, and just common sense tells us that too.
Yeah, but we have it backwards. Rather than building from the bottom up, as you pointed out in the past, we're building from the top down, and it's simply not working. What is this brinksmanship? This Beltway brinksmanship that has been put forward? I can only blame this on Republicans. I can blame it on, this is their program. The only thing that Democrats have done is they've been so damn weak. Democrats have been so damn weak that they've empowered these Republicans to believe that they can get away with this. This president has been so weak that the Republicans believe they can push this president around, and they still believe that. But what is the net effect of this kind of brinksmanship when you stand back and look at what it can do to us, even if we get this on board tomorrow? What does this mean for us?
Well, if you're talking, I don't know if you're talking economically or politically, but I can tell you politically, it's absolutely toxic because what you do, the combination of bad politicians and a bad press leads us to a situation where every time, in this case, the Republicans, and it has been the Republicans, hold the government hostage to extreme demands that are bad for the American people and that the American people don't want, according to the polls. Every time they do that, the media says, well, the other side's got to give a little. And it's not just that it's unfair reporting, it's that it's toxic, destructive reporting, because then politically, the Democrats are going to feel like they have to meet the Republicans every time they do one of these enormously destructive things. So naturally, the Republicans will keep doing it. Now, we don't know how much of the president's agenda is conservative on his own right, but whatever it is, this whole process is reinforcing the most destructive kind of politics and the most delusional thinking on the part of whether it's Ted Cruz or Representative Paul Ryan, who I notice the newspapers have been trying to make into some kind of moderate figure, just because that's the narrative they want to have, who's an extremist of the worst order. So we're really seeing crazies running economic policy in this country, holding it hostage every time. Look, Mike, the extremists have already gotten 100% of what they wanted in the 2013 budget. Democrats have already said, we'll vote for every single one of those cuts you put in. We'll vote for levels that are below the budget you and I agreed to last year. They've got that. They won that. Now they're asking for more, and if they get more, they'll just keep raising the ante, or in this case, lowering it, over and over until there's nothing left of this country.
Richard, isn't there the aspect of the Wall Street Democrat in play here, and that is Harry Reid had already agreed, and this president had already agreed to give the Republicans everything they wanted because it's what Wall Street wanted. You remember that? We want to cut back on Social Security. We want to change the way we even talk about Social Security increases. We want to cut safety nets. We want to do all these things that hurt poor America. And Wall Street loved that. Therefore, Harry Reid loved it, and therefore this president loved it. And they built it in to the existing budget already as if they had to. They didn't have to, did they?
Well, Harry Reid, to be fair, was a little tougher than either the president or Nancy Pelosi on the issue of Social Security and Medicare cuts. Pelosi went along with it. Obama put it in his budget. So a very scary outcome for this is everybody decides to look like quote unquote adults for the press by cutting Social Security and Medicare, which neither party wants to be blamed for, but they've just been waiting for some excuse to say it was the only way to solve the crisis. And they've been waiting to do it for exactly the reason you said, Mike, because Wall Street wants it. It's great for Wall Street. They're hoping more people will put their savings in Wall Street accounts once they have less in Social Security. And it's awful for America. And yeah, the fact of the matter is there are no heroes in this story, and we better be our own because nobody's fighting for us out there.
From an economic standpoint, when you have world powers looking at us, saying, really, this is what we have to face every time there's a budget. We have to worry about the entire democracy there in America just falling into shambles. This is, at some point, isn't there a world reaction to that? I mean, already there's discussion about the yen being the primary monetary value that's connected with the purchase of oil. That's already on the table. At some point, shouldn't we be worried about that type of thing?
We should be really worried about it because right now, a lot of the economic strength we have remaining is because the dollar is the world's currency, and because for the past several years, investors around the world have considered the U.S. Treasury, whether it's Treasury bonds or whatever, to be the safest investment around. And they've literally at various points been paying us to hold their money for them at negative interest. So we're losing that as a result of these claims and antics.
It ought to scare anybody that really is really following the net destruction of what's happening there in the Beltway, because, and I got to say this again, it is purely a Republican problem. And for the media to dress it up any other way is insane. Richard Eskow, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Mike.
Coming up, we'll be talking about the extremists who have hijacked the Republican Party. I'm Mike Papantonio. We'll be right back with more Ring of Fire.
This isn't some damn game. The American people don't want their government shut down, and neither do I.
Welcome back to Ring of Fire. I'm Mike Papantonio. John Boehner has his hands tied by Tea Party extremists who are willing to burn down our economy for their selfish goals. So why are long-standing GOP politicians willing to do that? I have attorneys Dave Teselle and Howard Nations with us to help answer that question. So Howard, let me begin with you. How is the hijacking of the Republican Party working out?
Well, Mike, you're seeing a very clear indication of the effect of the inmates running the asylum within the Republican Party with the NBC Wall Street Journal poll this weekend. It shows that the Republican Party has a 24% approval rating. God knows who those 24% are, but they have a 24% approval rating, which is the lowest rating in their history, even lower than Watergate. They have a 53% disapproval rating. Really interesting that the Tea Party only has a 21% approval rating, which is just 3 points less than the Republican Party. But the disapproval of the Tea Party, 47%, is actually, the disapproval is lower than the Republican Party. 53% of people disapprove of the Republicans, only 47% disapprove of the Tea Party. Is it working as their strategy against President Obama? No. President Obama is 2-1 in favorabilities over them. He has a 47% approval rating and only 41% disapproval. So, and
Dave, let me go to you. Hasn't this, you know, if you're a person who wants to end Obamacare, hasn't this been the worst thing the Republicans could have done, because they've got all this attention that they've been having to pay towards this whole budget fight, while the Obamacare program has been it's been going full tilt now, or it's approaching full tilt, because the Republicans have been, their attention has been towards this stupid, idiotic, this brain dead approach to government. What do you think?
Mike, absolutely. I think one of the things that's really important to understand about the Tea Party is the Tea Party is really not about governing, and it's not about doing what's right for the American people. And in many ways, it's not really just about Obamacare. It's about rolling back all of the progressive policies, Social Security, Medicaid, everything that's been good about this country that we, from FDR and the New Deal on. And what we've seen now is that the Tea Party, through a small group of people and with a bunch of large money backers, the Koch brothers, and a lot of the conservative groups that give money to the Tea Party, were able to basically hijack the Congress and bring us now to the brink of defaulting on our debt, of not paying our bills, something our country has never done, and that will cause a cataclysm if it happens, if it still could happen to this country. And what the Tea Party is doing is taking this, and every 6 months or every short period of time, they want to bring us and put the gun to the head of the American people and to the government and extract some form of concessions. And here, Obamacare is just the start.
In other words, Howard, elections don't really mean anything with this new Republican House of Crazies, as you point out. There's no question that the people behind this are exclusively Republican. I mean, even the moderate organizations in this country, Wall Street's talking about how crazy it is. Chamber of Commerce, you know, those bunch of big business thugs that really are not even American businesses. They're run by international conglomerates. They see this as a bad idea. If you take a look at the list, it's Club of Growth, Heritage Action, National Taxpayers Union, Family Research Council, on and on, all of them right-wing Republican crazies. Add to that Ted Cruz. Howard, take it from there and tell me what the net effect of this is for Ted Cruz and those organizations.
Well, the first effect of it is the blame for the shutdown. The shutdown of government, they're trying so very hard to blame it on the president. The polls showed that 53% of the voters blame Republicans for the shutdown, 31% blame the president. And as far as Cruz is concerned, he's getting what he wants. Ted Cruz has a brilliant strategy for Ted Cruz. In the presidential values poll this weekend, Cruz far and away led the all candidates for president in that group. In Iowa, Michelle Bachmann won the first straw poll. Cruz and Palin were together this weekend at the War Memorial, lying to veterans about who is responsible for the shutdown of the World War II memorial. So Cruz has found his intellectual soulmate in Sarah Palin, and the question is whether the dream ticket for the Tea Party is going to be Cruz Bachmann or Cruz Palin. But either way.
Well, hey, we would take, I mean, look, I'm not a Democrat. I'm an independent, but anybody with any kind of brain about politics would gladly take a Cruz Bachmann or Cruz Palin ticket to easily defeat. Let me ask you, Dave, Boehner didn't want this to happen, did he? Boehner, in his support, Boehner started off saying, look, we're going to come out with a clean bill. We're not going to get into a war here about Obamacare because we think it's stupid. Yep. What happened after that?
Yeah, what we've got here is we've got a civil war going on in the Republican Party. And in September of this year, Harry Reid has already come public and said, Senator Reid has said that John Boehner came to him, the Speaker of the House, and said he wanted a clean budget resolution. He didn't want to have this fight. He understood that elections matter. He understood that Obamacare was the law of the land. It's important to know that the Tea Partiers tried to bring this up in March of this year, the first time there was a dust-up, and sent a letter to John Boehner and to Eric Cantor and said, you know, hey, we Tea Partiers, we want to put Obamacare on the table. And that shocked Boehner. And he quickly got the votes together before the Tea Party could make the fight. And now, in September, he realized he didn't want to have this fight. And he agreed. He said to Harry Reid, I think we can have a clean budget resolution. And the agreement would be to keep the spending at levels reflective of the continuation of the automatic budget cuts that resulted from the 2011 deal. That would have been a huge concession that he would have won for his party, for Republicans. But he could not control his own party because the Tea Partiers are intent on taking down Obamacare and taking down this government. John Boehner, if he wanted to actually lead, if he actually wanted to govern, he would have stood up to the people in his own party, that small minority, and said to them, this is the thing we have to do for our country. But he didn't do that because he's more worried about keeping his speakership. And in doing that, he's turned the keys of the car over to Ted Cruz and Michelle Bachmann and Sarah Palin and that ilk.
I am concerned that what we're seeing here playing itself out just has the potential to repeat itself time and time again because of gerrymandering. I mean, there's no question that that's what this is about. And we see that at any point, you have the Republicans that can stop government. They can stop a good public policy simply by being recalcitrant in the House and just acting like ignorant rubes that they are. And so I compare what's happening with what even the moderates in the party. Paul Ryan came out along with Boehner and said, "Look, we can't do this. We shouldn't do this. This is bad policy. We have a Democratic president. We have to ride that out. We have a Democratic Senate. We have to ride that out, and we simply have to. We can't look crazy." And almost as soon as Paul Ryan said that, they started acting like the lunatics, born in Crazyville.
Well, that's true, but you have to remember to place a certain amount of blame on the Senate Republicans, because Boehner did pass a clean CR through the House. It only got 14 votes against it from the Tea Party. They were crushed. But then it goes over to the Senate. When it got to the Senate, Ted Cruz stepped up and filed an amendment to delay Obamacare. In doing so, this is where Ted Cruz gained all of his power, because all of the senators of the Republican Party in the Senate voted with Cruz on his delaying Obamacare. It was a party line vote. It was defeated by the Democrats, of course, but every one of those senators who had the opportunity to stand up at that point and say, "Stop this foolishness right now," voted with that bill with Ted Cruz. As a result, Cruz became the new hero of the conservatives. He went back over to the House and said, "Okay, you guys take it from here. We can do this." He became the de facto Speaker of the House of Representatives.
You can't let the Democrats go on this either, can you? Haven't the Democrats brought themselves to this point in effect by being so damn weak? Weak-chinned, weak-willed, weak leadership. As a matter of fact, what Reid had agreed to before the clean bill, this thing called the clean bill started, was anything but a clean bill. It was taking rights away from elderly. It was taking rights away from America's most impoverished. It was taking safety nets away. It was anything but a good bill to begin with. But that's because we have Democrats who I call Wall Street Democrats. What's your take on that?
Absolutely, and I think there's two main points on that. First of all, I think the Democrats have bent over backwards for several years now. It was all about Obama getting elected in 2012 and making it to his second term. And even after the second term, whenever it came time that the Tea Party could be crushed or put back or pushed down, the Democrats gave in and gave them victories and gave them momentum. And as it's continued to happen, it's only fueled the fire. It's only said to the extreme right wing, hey, all we have to do is put a gun to the head of the American people, and the Democrats will cave. They'll give us what we want. We'll take it if we have to take big chunks or small chunks at a time. The idea that Democrats would simply agree to take that 2011 deal and the automatic cuts and concessions and make that the law of the land without a fight is mind-boggling.
Just because they are so weak, Howard. This really does flow it all flows from the top. It all flows to Obama. There are emails and memos out saying if we push Obama, he will cave. It's more than one or two of those. It's more than one of the two of those emails and those talking points surface. This is a president who caves, and that this is why we are here to a certain degree, because they've counted on him caving, right?
Well, they have counted on him caving, but fortunately for President Obama, the caving has happened mostly on the Republican side. There's an absolute vacuum in leadership. Where is Christie? Where's McConnell? Where's Boehner? Where is Ryan? Where are the real supposed leaders of the Republican Party right now when Ted Cruz is out there taking over leadership of the party? Cruz has got a brilliant strategy for Cruz. Cruz has 5 years to his next election. He's gained the support of every single one of the big money people. All the big right-wing people are behind him very strongly, and you're hearing nothing from the leaders.
Yeah, he certainly is the new Republican Joe McCarthy. That's what we can expect out of this very scary character. Dave, Howard, thank you for joining me.
Thank you.
A pleasure, Mike.
When we come back, we'll be talking with author Ari Berman about the Republican fight to protect their southern strongholds. I'm Mike Papantonio, and you're watching Ring of Fire. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Ring of Fire. I'm Mike Papantonio. Republicans think they can keep a majority in the House by pandering to old white conservatives in the South, and they might be right. I've got author Ari Berman with me now to talk about that topic. Ari, the GOP's long-term goal has always been to kind of enshrine themselves into, certainly into a polarized South, to where they control at least the southern states, possibly as many as 32 states in the United States. It's working for them, isn't it?
It really is, Pap. If you look after the 1994 election, there were 69 members of the Republican Party from the South. Today, there's 98. That's a really dramatic change. And what it shows is that the South, number one, has become more conservative on the local level, on the congressional level, but it also shows that the Republican Party itself has become wider, more Southern, and more conservative. And that's why the Republican Party has become so extreme. That's why they're trying to nullify federal laws, shut down the government. It's a product of how the Republican Party is shifted by really becoming a party of the South.
Tell me, give us some idea numbers-wise how successful they've been with this, if you can.
Well, they've been incredibly successful, first in winning the 2010 election, really sweeping that midterm election, and then drawing the lines in such a way to ensure that they hold power. And you have a situation all across the South right now. There's these huge Republican majorities. You take a state like North Carolina, for example, which was pretty evenly split between Republicans and Democrats prior to 2010. Now it's controlled overwhelmingly by Republicans. Democrats only have 3 seats, for example, in that state, as opposed to 7, which they had before redistricting happened. So you have a situation right now from Florida all the way up to Virginia. There's these enormous Republican majorities that have become inflated because of redistricting. So there's really a disproportionate influence from that Southern Republican caucus in the Congress right now.
At some point, Ari, you know, I don't know anybody who follows this as closely as you do, but I mean, I read this and I conclude that it almost starts looking like this insurmountable impediment to the Democrats ever really getting anything done in the House because of this redistricting. I mean, we're seeing it right now, but I mean, even down the road, I don't see how Democrats ever accomplish much in the House.
Well, it's certainly possible, but it's a lot harder. There has to be a really major wave election. You can't just have a typical election where Democrats do pretty well, because in the last election, for example, Democrats got 1.5 million more votes than Republicans in the House of Representatives, but Republicans got 33 more seats. So, I mean, already they have to get well in excess of 1.5 million votes. So you have to imagine Democrats have to get, what, 3 or 4 million more votes to put the House in play. I mean, that really doesn't seem like a very democratic system to me. That seems like a system where the party with the most votes is in fact not getting the most seats, not anywhere close to getting the most seats.
I think one thing that makes most observers about this so angry is the brain-dead nature of Democratic leadership. People were warning the Democrats about this well before 2010. You saw huge money pouring into state elections, all the way from dog catcher up to governor. And you had a few Democrats that kept saying this is what they're trying to do. That they're trying to minimize the importance of what happens at a federal level and gain control of politics state by state. And it's almost like Democratic leadership completely, utterly ignored it. In particular, under Bill Clinton, that's where the ignorance began of what really was transpiring here.
I think, unfortunately, for the Democrats, they tend to put a lot of value on presidential elections and not as much value on the other races. And that was particularly magnified in 2010. I mean, so many of the problems that we're facing right now are a byproduct of the 2010 election, when so many states swung from red to blue, and then Republicans got control of them right when the new census came out, so they were able to draw the maps in all of these states. So we really have this inflated Republican majority that doesn't reflect the will of the people in 2008 or 2012, but essentially Republicans won one election, the 2010 election, and now they can govern for the next decade, basically, until those new lines are drawn. So yes, I mean, it was a catastrophic failure that Democrats didn't turn out their people in 2010, and now it's just harder. It's not that these legislatures are insurmountable in terms of being taken over again. It's not like some of these people from the South can't be defeated on a congressional level, but it just makes it that much tougher because you have a lot of Republican politicians right now who are in these very conservative districts. It was a deliberate strategy. They drew the districts so they put as many Democrats and as many minorities into as few districts as possible in the South. And they made the rest of the districts controlled by white Republicans. So you have a situation where the districts that are controlled by white Southern Republicans are more conservative, and the districts controlled by the few Democrats are much, much, much more Democratic than there otherwise would have been, and there's far fewer swing districts than there were before.
And clearly drawn on racial lines. There's no way to dress this up. It's old white people all stuffed into the same district versus minorities, which of course, the math on that means that you're going to have fewer legislators in those very few minority gerrymandered areas. So as we go forward, when's the next time we can do anything about this? It's going to take incredible money, and then we also know the history of the South. Once they became Democrat because they were so angry after the Civil War, they remained Democrat because they hated Republicans, and now the Republicans have turned that all on its head. Lee Atwater was very successful with that. When's the next time we can even do anything about this?
Well, clearly some of these legislatures can be contested, and you're going to have, for example, competitive races in places like North Carolina in 2014. The districts aren't going to be redrawn, though, until 2020 when the next census comes out. So this has to be a long-term project. You have to think about, well, maybe we don't retake the legislature in 2014 or 2016 or even 2018, but we start to chip away at the Republican numbers to the point where in 2020, these things can flip, and then you can draw new lines. But I don't think people could fool themselves that in one election this is going to change.
No, it's not. But it all flows from the top, Ari. Poor leadership at the top of the Democratic Party has been responsible for so many disasters like this one. Ari Berman, thank you for joining me, okay?
Thanks for having me, Pap.
There's an interesting aspect to income inequality that hasn't been talked about. It's actually making our country dumber. Joining me to explain how that happens is Farron Cousins, executive editor of the Trial Lawyer magazine. You know, Farron, years ago in the media, we used to just joke about the question, are America's just becoming stupid? I mean, have we just reached the point to where we could be classified generally as a culture of stupid? Now the empirical data has shown that we were right. Give me your take on this.
Well, we are becoming too stupid, and in fact, earlier this year, former Supreme Court Justice David Souter actually wondered out loud, in front of an audience, whether or not American stupidity was becoming such a problem that it could actually lead to a dictatorship. I mean, and he was being serious. He wasn't joking around. He's very concerned, and we all should be. These newest studies that have come out are showing us that America is, roughly in the middle of the pack when it comes to things like literacy, which is still very poor. But when you go deeper, when you get into areas of math and technology, the United States is right down there at the bottom. And this is a problem with our education system, but it's deeper than just education. This actually goes into the fundamentals of the economy, of the income inequality, which is leading to this intelligence gap.
Let's talk about that in a minute, but let's put in terms of, they looked at Norway, Sweden, Japan, Finland, Netherlands, and then they looked at how does Great Britain and the United States compare to those countries. And it was a disaster where it came to things like technology and math and critical thinking.
Well, and the other aspect of that is that those countries don't have the glaring inequality that the United States and Great Britain have. There is not this huge gap between the haves and the have-nots. And so what you have in America is you have this private school system heavily funded by the wealthy. The wealthy send all their, their children there. They can easily afford college. They can get a great education. But you contrast that, with maybe a public school down in, South Alabama, and there is no opportunity for advancement. There's no chance for these kids to graduate high school with any of the skills that they need. So we're perpetuating this horrible gap in intelligence. And it's just something that is happening because of all of these budget cuts. I think we've lost about 5% of the budget for public education just this year. And it goes right back to that, the wealthy don't have to worry about it. They can afford to send their kids to the best schools. They can afford to send their kids to any college they want. But the public schools, especially the ones with the low-income students, are being hit the hardest. And so we've got this entire generation of low-skilled, low-intelligent Americans that are coming into the workforce with absolutely nothing to offer.
So elitism really is making us stupider. We have a sense of that every time you see one of these late night shows where they take a camera out on the road and they walk down the streets of New York and they'll ask them basic questions like who was the first president of the United States, and people can't answer that. What's your take? I mean, isn't that just, at least we see that firsthand? We see Americans that try to act like Kim Kardashian. We see Americans that think that Honey Boo Boo is great TV, or the Duck Dynasty is really good TV. We see that, and you have to ask your question. The question: how stupid have we become? I mean, that's what people are fighting about right now. They're trying to say, what do we do about this?
Well, it's that's a whole concept that I actually like to call the redneckification of America. We put these guys on TV, these Duck Dynasties and the Honey Boo Boos, and at first the audience watches because it's like, wow, this is so outlandish. These Beverly Hillbilly type peoples who live out in the backwoods that now they're millionaires. This is so funny. But then it's the TV network executives that are laughing at the audience saying, you're just as dumb because you're sitting there watching this. And we don't know any better. I mean, we really... I came across a great study a couple days ago, actually. It says that, human evolution is actually, we're evolving in a way that's making us dumber. The peak of human intelligence happened about 50,000 years ago. But because of our society today, the way things work, those low intelligent people who could not have survived back in the days of hunter-gatherers, we've made it mainstream saying it's okay to be below average. You can be an average guy that somebody wants to have a beer with and be president, and that's not okay.
It's okay for Sarah Palin to be in a leadership position, or Michelle Bachmann, or Ted Cruz, or Perry. It's okay because we have become them. The New York Post said it very, very accurately. Said U.S. adults are dumber than your average human.
And sadly,
I
that is
don't
true.
know. It is something we have to pay attention to. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you.
That's it for this week's Ring of Fire, but you can keep up with us throughout the week online at ringoffireradio.com or on Twitter at Ring of Fire Radio and on Facebook. I'm Mike Papantonio. We'll see you next week right here on Ring of Fire.